1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome to week 14 edition of Fanduel Labs. Fanduel DFS Labs, I should say. I am Mike Johnson, M Johnson 86, as I'm known in those DFS and best ball streets. Of course, coming to you from oneweekseason.com. We are coming off the craziest, busiest week of the NFL season. Thanksgiving, of course, had a crazy Thanksgiving slate with some awesome games, some high-profile offenses, and then, of course, the Black Friday, the Philadelphia meltdown, and then that left us with a somewhat ugly Sunday slate with a highest team total of 45.5 last week. Of course, we did our FanDuel Labs last week on the Thanksgiving slate, so this week we'll be back to a main slate. We didn't have one for you last week, but yeah, it was an interesting one. It was a successful one for myself. But yeah, a lot to dig into this week. We've got, of course, the Bills and Bengals, the big showdown there with a couple of high-profile offenses kind of fighting for their playoff lives. We have some offenses that have really been struggling, hoping to get back on track. We've got some showdowns with the Bears and Packers, the NFC North on the line there. And the Colts and Jaguars, also the AFC South. So yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot to dig into. There's, it's going to be a wild, fun week, and we are in December, the frozen tundra, which is where I live. That's why I've got the summer background up, trying to remind myself of better days to come. So with that said, I will bring in my esteemed colleague, Maximus. How are you today?
Hello, my man. Looks like you're visiting me there with that background there, kind of in my area a little bit.
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. We got 1 month left of regular season, guys, to make magic happen with some big tourney wins. And I know it was crazy busy for you last week with 2-3 slates in 8 days kind of deal. So looking forward to getting back to normal with you for the main slate this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of alluded to it in the intro, but this last week on the main slate, I did have a pretty successful week. I had a big sweat in the flea flicker on DraftKings. That's their $5 tournament, 83,000 entries. I was sweating it deep into the contest. I'll go ahead and share the screen. Actually ended up taking 7th, as you can see there, for a couple grand. I was up as high as like second or third at one point, kind of bouncing around. Had Brock Bowers and Seattle defense going in the afternoon slate. You could see it was a Tyrod Taylor double stack with John Mechie and Adonai Mitchell, something we talked about extensively last week. JM was all over this from the start. And the rest of us kind of also were seeing the same thing. I had the Bijan Robinson bring back, which was kind of the key there. Devon Achane and Juwan Johnson, little mini correlation there, would have won it if Johnson had caught a touchdown instead of Vele there. I was really rooting hard for Shuck. He gets stuffed on a 4th and 1 quarterback sneak at the end of that game when they were trying to come back. And then had Devontae Adams as the last piece in the early games with Bowers in the flex and Seattle defense. And I dig into this lineup a little more in the workshop this week, which Inner Circle members can find on the premium podcast feed probably by the end of the day today. Also want to shout out, it was a very active week in the 1 week season Binks channel. We had a lot of members winning, really tore up the slate on, like we said, it's an ugly slate from like a scoring perspective, but those are the types of slates I think we can often find the biggest edge here. Also want to point out and give a big shout out to Felix Char. You could see he took second. He had 2 lineups tied for second. They were different lineups though. And then he had a 5th and 6th place lineup as well. So, if he didn't exist, I would have been like $15,000 richer. But anyways, he's a longtime 1 week season Inner Circle member. So it was fun chatting with him afterwards. You can't see it on the desktop here, but on the site, you could see he has the big orange OWS logo. So it was kind of cool to see. There's 5 of the top 7 there, OWS logos, in an 83,000 person tournament. Was pretty fun. So, it was a profitable, good, fun weekend for me. Could have been a little bit higher, but if I'm gonna lose, I like seeing the orange pennants above me. We'll quickly talk about the. Oh shoot. We'll quickly talk about the bottom-up build, of course, from last week. Let me share that screen now. So the Week 13 bottom-up build winner, Football Lords, had a first-place roster. Also a Tyrod Taylor double stack with Adonai Mitchell, John Mechie, and the Bijan Bringback. He had Quentin Johnston and Kamani Vidal from the Chargers, and then he had Devin Neal, Gunnar Helm, and the Cleveland Browns. So nice little stack there. Couple of stacks, and really kind of bet on those things, and was able to get Bijan Robinson in this format at only 5.9% owned. Of course, he was 9,500, so hard to fit in there. But very, very clever, very well-crafted lineup. Congrats to Football Lords. In the description to the video on YouTube, you can find the link to this week's Week 14 bottom-up build. Again, the salary constraints, it will let you submit a lineup for the full 60K. I can't adjust that. But, in order for recognition to actually take first place, 54.5 is the maximum. It says it right in the title. You should have $5,500 or more in salary remaining when you are all done. So, that's where we're at. That sums up everything from last week, and now we can hop into this week. I'll throw it over to you, and we can start building unless you got anything to add.
No, great week for the OWS family. I'm happy to see it. And always a good consolation, I guess, if you're not hitting it, then somebody that's with us is taking it down. And looks like we had a domination in that tournament for OWS, planting the flag, if you will, this week. Yeah. But I'm ready to roll if you are with Week 14. Amazing.
Yeah, flies by.
So this is the last bye week, I believe, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we have
11 games.
Yeah, more of a full slate. So we're going to start today with, amazingly, for as good as they've been most of the year, I don't think we've built a team around them to this point. And maybe there'll be a little recency bias from last week, although people that are somewhat sharp, I'm sure that won't factor in. It's based on the elements and what eventually took place in the game last week. But I want to start this week. Really good FanDuel price, I feel, at the quarterback spot. Let's go ahead and lock in a quarterback and his pass catcher, which is Mr. Red Zone and Mr. Touchdown, which is what we like the most, especially on FanDuel. I want to take advantage of a salary snafu potentially with a bringback and do a little stack, add a tight end. Usually the tight ends, cheaper elite guys on FanDuel, attach it to a good offense with their quarterback or go elite. Mid-range is where, it can get a little more muddled with historical FanDuel strategy. But so I want to start with Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. I want to pair him with Devontae Adams and Colby Parkinson. Devontae Adams, no introduction needed, even in a game where I think the Rams started out rolling last week. And then, some weather elements happened. Stafford made some uncharacteristic, turnovers that he had not really done much of the year. And, Carolina obviously turning into a very underrated team who was 500 at that point. But so Stafford, Devontae Adams, who is the prototypical red zone target. The touchdowns have been there. And then I wanted to attach Colby Parkinson for this particular team with Tyler Higbee on IR. Colby Parkinson is seemingly rising to the cream of the crop of the tight end room there. He's had 3 receiving touchdowns in 4 games, actually. He's been targeted more over the past 2 games since Higbee went on IR. And then I want to bring back to be Michael Wilson. I think 5,700 is way too low a price for a guy where, we have the Harrison news we're waiting on with the heel injury. It is possible he may not be able to go this week, and the price is already good, and that would just lift it to nuclear status if you want, if we're building a team for this game to take off. I think Wilson there would be a good bring back, and that leaves us with some salary based on what we do at defense to have some flexibility to build around, maybe in some running back spots that we like at the higher payer up level potentially. So yeah, Stafford, Devontae, Parkinson, bring it back with Michael Wilson. If you're doing multiple entries, guys, and you're building around this game, of course, Trey McBride always is in play. But I wanted to start it here, and then got a couple defenses in mind, but I'll throw it back to you what your thoughts are and let you pass the baton back to you.
Yeah, I mean, this spot is what do we have here? So the Rams are tied with the Bills for the highest team total on the slate. They're both at 28 currently as we sit here on Wednesday. Nobody else is over 25.5. Both the Packers and Seahawks are at 25.5. But that's a pretty healthy gap between the top and the next. And obviously, like you said, Higbee being out we know Adams, what he's doing, and the touchdown stuff is awesome. I mean, you just 5, 6, 7. He's got 11 touchdowns in the last 6 games. That's pretty insane. 14 on the season. But like the other thing is like we haven't seen him go over 100 yards, and I think at some point there's a good chance that happens. So I love that. Obviously, Stafford, Devontae, and then Parkinson with Higbee out has kind of assumed that top role. So as in the tight end room, which was a little bit harder. They're still playing 3 tight ends, but Parkinson's pretty clearly the top one. And then Wilson, if Harrison's out, he'll probably be uber chalk rightfully at that price tag. If Harrison's in, I still think he's a great play at that price tag. He played every snap almost last week, ran 43 routes on 45 dropbacks. So a game I'd expect the Rams to kind of control and be we thought that last week against Carolina, but I think Carolina's kind of proven themselves at this point. Like they're a pretty legit operation. They've got several impressive wins this season. So the Rams and Cardinals are first and second in the NFL in pass rate over expectation in the last 4 weeks. So everything about this points to a pretty fruitful spot for fantasy. You mentioned defenses. So to me, like especially coming off that Seattle game last week, this week, the expensive ones, the Denver at the Raiders with Geno Smith, Cleveland at home against Cam Ward. So you've got 2 of the best defenses in the league in terms of pressure rate against like the 2 most sack-prone quarterbacks and offenses in the league. So, for me, it's really hard to get away from those 2. I actually think that if on the lineups where I do, the Titans and the Raiders defenses at super cheap salaries would be the directions I go. Maybe Minnesota. So I'm kind of a top or bottom salary structure at defense. My thought process there being if either of these Broncos or Browns defenses doesn't smash, the most likely path is that Bo Nix or Shedeur Sanders kind of had a meltdown. And so the game script didn't let their defenses tee off. So I prefer the expensive ones, but also there's a lot of good plays this week that we'll want to get up to. So, I'll probably have about half my lineups on those top couple defenses and half my lineups on those cheap ones, kind of playing the opposite angle of it. I'll let I'll let you keep going and choose. I'm guessing I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you with the defensive stuff. I'll let you pick your poison here.
Right. Another thing about the Rams too. I mean, they're not really in a position to be. I mean, they're 9-3. I mean, they have their own division to stay atop of, which is a very competitive division, and also that number one seed, which is so important. The way the playoff seeding structure is now, which there are a lot of teams nipping at the heels, so to speak. So definitely an important game, I think, for the Rams to get back on track. And the Cardinals too. I mean, like you said, the pass rate over expectations through the roof in this one. And also Arizona doesn't really present much of a pass rush when it comes to Stafford. He's not obviously a rushing quarterback. And he only has a few games, I think, where he's hit that 300-yard bonus. I could definitely see this being a spot where Stafford you can tack on that bonus possibility as well. Just another word on the start of the build there. For defense, I'm with you as well. Definitely the top tier, very appetizing. I think for the purposes of this team, though, you touched on it briefly, but I wanted to go down, and we can always adjust it as we're continuing to build. I wanted to go ahead and go down to the Minnesota Vikings at 3,300. I thought they played great on the road at Seattle. Now they're back at home. They get a Washington Commanders team who, albeit did play admirable against those Denver Broncos on Sunday night. A little bit of a short week for them. Don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to come back or not. And I think Vikings, kind of being back home, are in a spot where I think, overall their defense has been looking good. And so I think at 3,300, they're viable enough to plug in. And then that'll get us to a little over 7,300 in salary left for the rest of the positions. And then I guess I'll throw it back to you. I have some running backs in mind. I'm sure you do as well. I'm curious to hear where you may want to go at the running back spot.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're saying there's a chance. I guess Daniels practiced in a limited fashion last week. They're saying he could come back this week. I mean, I think if they play Daniels this week on the road against Brian Flores' defense, just fire everybody. I mean, he's the franchise. What are you doing? I mean, if he's healthy to play, it's hard to tell a guy okay, you're going to sit out the rest of the year. I don't think he'll allow that, but I think one more week would be in order, especially just with his style of play and stuff. That would be pretty dicey in my opinion. But yeah, I like the Vikings defense. They did a great job last week. They just it was 3-0. The Seahawks were ahead only 3-0. Brosmer, the Vikings D had turned over the Seahawks, and they were on the verge of potentially scoring. And then on that 3rd and goal, Brosmer had that stupid play and he threw the pick six, 85-yard touchdown return. But yeah, I mean, if he just throws that away or takes the sack and it's 3-3, they could have, they still scored 9 points in a game where their team got demolished. So for super cheap, I definitely like the Vikings this week. I think, next we've probably got to go to the running back position. There's a lot of guys I like this week. One that stands out to me right now, Quinshon Judkins at home against the Titans, 7,900. It's a low scoring game in terms of the team. It's a very low projected team total here. And game total, I think the game total is 34 right now. But Judkins, the thing that stands out to me about him is last week was the first time we saw him. He had 26 touches in a game where it ended up being a trailing game script. And we had Dylan Sampson, the other rookie who kind of takes away a meaningful amount of work sometimes. He suffered an injury. So as home favorites here, and we know Judkins, they'll use him in the Wildcat near the goal line. I kind of like him. There's some other spots that I like as well. RJ Harvey stands out at 6,500 in a pretty good matchup on the road against the Raiders. I think Josh Jacobs at home against a very giving Bears defense. And then, of course, James Cook at 9,300 stands out. So, yeah, I mean, do you have a preference there?
I think James Cook should be a priority this week against the Cincinnati Bengals. We know their run defense is subpar. I think Cook's going to be called upon. We even saw Cook get a little bit involved in the passing game finally against the Steelers last week. I don't know if they're saving that or they finally decided, hey, he can be used this way too. So I think Cook can be multifaceted as we're getting later in the season, and the Bills are another team where playoff hopes are in the balance here. I mean, they're in the hunt. I think they're currently a wild card spot, but I think James Cook would be a priority for me. I love the RJ Harvey call. I think he's in another favorable matchup against the Raiders. He'd be a nice flex, I would think, because it's a 4:00 game. I also like Achane. I know he'll be chalky, but going back to Achane and maybe correlating him with one of those jet receivers that have started to kind of be the meat of that offense with Tyrod, I could see that being a route we could go to. But what says you?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, we could throw Cook in there. You mentioned the receiving. He's got 3 receptions in 4 straight games after he had a 4-game stretch where he caught only 1 total pass. So, yeah, as their offense has kind of dealt with varying issues, they've got him more involved in that way, as they should. Pretty insane workload, handled 35 touches last week. Again, the Bills are one of those teams that we are getting to that, make or break point in the season. They are 8-4 now after last week's win, but they don't have – the AFC is pretty competitive. They don't have a huge margin for error. There is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I believe they are currently the 6 or 7 seed. So, I mean, they've got a little cushion. There's a bunch of teams at 6-6. The Texans are 7-5, though, nipping at their heels and own the tiebreaker. So there's, I mean, we just saw the Bengals, like they beat the Ravens last week. So it's not like they're, the pushover automatic win that, we might have thought of back in weeks 5 or 6 or something. So they're going to have to rely on him and Josh Allen. Obviously, the price tag reflects that, but I would be kind of surprised if Cook doesn't put up a 20-point game in this spot for sure. And then Harvey, yeah, we touched on him. He had 2. There you go. You were muted. Harvey had 2 touchdowns on Sunday night, but kind of quelled the fears around McLaughlin potentially being like the goal line back. So, yeah, at 6,500, I mentioned the likelihood of those defenses kind of teeing off the Browns and Broncos teeing off on the opposing quarterbacks. And so I think Judkins and Harvey could both have very large workloads. I think, you could see 20-plus touches for Harvey, 25 to 30 for Judkins in games that they're leading for sure. So that if we throw those 2 in, it leaves us with 5,700. So for our last wide receiver spot, if you want to take your pick there, or if there's anything else you want to tinker with, or you want to come off one of those running backs, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, we could go to John Mechie at 5,700 to just finish this build. I kind of prefer Adonai Mitchell for the ceiling, who's a couple $100 more. I think he's 6,000. So if we were to do Adonai there, who clearly is, starting to build a chemistry with Tyrod, we could switch out RJ Harvey in the flex, and we could come down to somebody like Chris Godwin or Jacoby Myers. I think both those guys I kind of like this week. Godwin was starting to look like more like himself last week. I think another week removed from kind of coming back and getting back with the offense. I think against the Saints. Don't think Evans and I did see a report where Evans and Jalen McMillan, I think they're coming back to practice at least, but I would imagine they'd still be at least a week away.
I think they said the target for Evans was week 15 at the earliest. So they're probably just trying, and it's a collarbone thing. So he probably can like run and stuff now, but he's probably still got some time before he can start taking hits. So yeah, I don't think he'll be back. I don't really want to go wide receiver in the flex this week though. I think there's so many good running back options that I think keeping Harvey there, but like if you want to come down off Judkins with their low team total, I'd be okay with that. I think the one risk I see with Judkins this week would be, two really, if Shedeur Sanders, if he gets exposed a little bit, he's been solid enough. The 2 game scripts have worked out. The schedule works out perfectly for him. Like he should be okay. But also we could see an implosion at some point, or the game is just very low scoring. So if you wanted to come off, if you wanted to get to Mitchell, I'd be okay with that. And then you go with like Breece Hall to correlate with him, kind of bet on that Jets offense as the clear wide receiver 1 and running back 1. Or you could go with Chase Brown, who's been running pretty well and faces a very beatable Bills run defense, and kind of get that running back correlation within the same game.
Yeah, I like that. And it seems like people, we at OWS talk about it quite a bit, just, running backs in the same game, kind of being on a roster. I think that alone can differentiate you regarding ownership or regarding the way you design or build a team. It seems like, I don't know if the field, so to speak, is caught up to that possibility of building where you put 2 running backs on the opposing teams in the same game. So I do like that strategy. And yeah, Chase Brown is, the latter part of the season, he's been producing more for sure. And then the other one you had said was Breece Hall, and then you have a player block with Mitchell and Hall. My only question with that would be may require, I'm thinking a Dolphins bring back maybe. If we went
I don't think it does. I think you could, but I also think, Achane at 9,200, it doesn't require it at all. The Bills or the Jets defense has actually been playing pretty well. Like the Jets have been very competitive. They won. They won last week, I believe, against the Falcons. Another close Falcons loss. So they won 27-24, but they've been pretty competitive, at least keeping games close against the better teams they've played. We've got Tua also, like his splits in December, and when weather gets cold, especially on the road, he has not been great historically. So I think, the clear running back 1 and wide receiver 1 for the Jets, it wouldn't shock me if, you look at their combined salary and it's $7,500 for Hall, $6,000 for Mitchell. So that's $13,500. So basically you're looking like, can this block get us 40 to 45 points realistically? And I certainly, that wouldn't shock me at all. This Jets team could, they could score 4 touchdowns again this week. So yeah, I kind of like that. I can go either way though, because I think that Bengals Bills game obviously is going to be very, both run defenses have been pretty giving. So the one worry I would have there would be with the game script. If the Bills play with a lead, Chase Brown, he had a nice game last week. They ran so many plays. He had 15 rush attempts for 78 yards, caught 7 passes as well. But Samaje Perine was back, and he played a meaningful role himself, running 14 times and catching 2 passes. So, Pirine plays a lot of passing downs. I guess that's from a game script perspective. I think, Brown might have a little more risk. I kind of like Hall, who's, he's like the engine of this offense right now.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I very much prefer Breece Hall too. You make a good point too. The Dolphins, when they're on the road in cold weather, haven't looked at the weather report yet. They do tend to be a different team functionally or dysfunctionally sometimes. However, if you're doing multiple teams, we do have $100 left over. You actually could do Breece Hall, Mitchell, and then at tight end, you could go to Darren Waller at 5,100, and then you would just have Stafford with Adams. You'd still have a correlation there, and you can move off Parkinson for Darren Waller if you want.
I think I like better avoiding Waller, sticking with the Stafford double, and adding in. So instead of going with Mitchell, then if you've got Hall, you could get up to Myers or Godwin as well. You had mentioned those guys earlier. So or Alec Pierce is at that $6K price tag, coming off a nice game playing the Jaguars.
Yeah, I love that. I'm completely with you there in hindsight there. Yeah, Godwin's looking good. Jacoby Myers led the team in, I think, every wide receiver metric last week, even though Brian Thomas Jr. had come back. So, yeah, it seems like Myers is getting more familiar and more comfortable in that offense with Liam Cohen. Although, Brian Thomas still capable down the stretch. Maybe he just needs a little more time to get revved up, so to speak. But yeah, no, I'm fine with that too. I definitely prefer Godwin or Myers there, and then keep Colby, and then stick with Breece Hall with Cook.
Which receiver do you choose? I'll let you make the final call.
Let's go with Godwin. I think Godwin's going to have less competition still with Evans and McMillan still, probably a week or two away from potentially getting back into that offense. Obviously, Egbuka's had a great season overall as a rookie, but Godwin is the bread and butter when he's healthy. The Bucs are obviously in need of continuing their winning ways to with their division situation. They're staying atop of it. And the eye test for me, Godwin definitely was starting to look like his what we've come to know him as when he's firing on all cylinders, so to speak. So, yeah, I'll keep it at Godwin if that's cool with you.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you listening on the podcast feed, final roster that we're landing on here, a Matthew Stafford double stack with Devontae Adams and Colby Parkinson. With the Michael Wilson bring back, we have a 3 running back lineup with Breece Hall, James Cook, and RJ Harvey. And then rounding it out with the Vikings defense and Chris Godwin. So, an interesting build for sure. I think, a lot of people will be building around that Rams stack to begin with, but we alluded to it early on. There's a ton of good running back plays, I feel like, this week. So I think that it's going to result in a lot of these good plays kind of being spread out. You're not going to have to worry about, like last week, we were like searching for stuff. So everybody kind of landed on Achane and Breece and kind of this Vidal, kind of the same spots for huge portion of the contestants this week. A little bit harder to decipher, harder to get down to. Even James Cook, who's got a smash spot, you look at, he's only $400 cheaper than Jonathan Taylor. Devon Achane, who's been awesome, and Bijan are cheaper than him. So I think that his ownership in most tournaments will at least be somewhat kept in check, relative to other stuff. So, yeah, I think this is a really strong lineup, and pretty pleased with the process there.
James Cook could be the classic pay up to be contrarian, as we like to say. So,
it won't be contrarian. He'll be popular. I'm just saying he won't get off the rails to like that 40-50%. With some of the guys recently. So definitely check us out, oneweekseason.com. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Scooby 8714, just started from the beginning. Thanks for watching, Scooby. He says, thank you for doing FanDuel. Of course, that's what we're here for. lock in that edge where there's just less content, less focus. Gabriel the Prophet, Broncos due for regression. Watch the Raiders beat the Broncos. Yeah, I think for sure can make some money if you play into that. The Raiders, of course, they are, it's easy to pile on, but they're at home for nearly min price. Their defense against Bo Nix, who has struggled at times this season, would not shock me at all. I kind of mentioned that earlier, playing the opposite end of what I think will be, after what the Seahawks did, people will want to pay for those expensive defenses just after you see an expensive defense kind of break the slate like that. And then you have two defenses in the Broncos and Browns in such dominant spots. It's going to be hard for people not to FOMO into those plays. And I might be one of those too. But yeah, definitely an angle there to play with the Raiders being super cheap and can open up your roster. So check us out, oneweekseason.com. Of course, we have our Inner Circle memberships. Rest of the season are discounted, as well as our weekly passes that you can check out, or our DFS level. But highly recommend the Inner Circle if, for the rest of the season. Check us out, see what it's about and potentially join for good for next season. Hopefully bink down the stretch here. So I am Mike. He is Max. Thank you for joining us. We will see you in Discord. We will see you on Twitter. We will see you at the top of the leaderboards.
1 week season.